The auction catalog lands on the table with a weight that has nothing to do with paper. Run your finger down the estimate column and you will find a reference 1518 perpetual calendar. A chronograph, a moon phase, a calendar that knows the lengths of months, valued at a sum that could buy a house in Geneva. The number feels like pure market confidence. In 2012, a Wall Street Journal report alleged something else entirely. That some Swiss luxury watch brands and the auctioneers at Antiquorum had formed an alliance to boost auction prices, prestige, and consumer demand. The bidder in the room was not always a collector. Sometimes the bidder was the brand itself, reaching back to buy its own history. That single allegation opens two doors at once. The first door leads to a paradox. How can an accusation of manipulation create real prestige, real waiting lists, real wealth locked in steel and gold? The second door hides a figure. The museum buyer, the heritage department, the quiet paddle raised from a Geneva telephone line. Both doors lead to the same room, and the room is the market you trust every time you check a hammer price online. But what if the gavels fall is the last act of a script written months before? The visible world of Patek Philippe is a masterpiece of restraint. You see the dial, silvered and sunburst finished, catching light in slow arcs. You hear the auctioneer's rhythmic chant, a cadence that climbs like a heartbeat. You feel the sharp intake of breath when a rare reference crosses the block, and the catalog's glossy pages bend under your thumb. The story the crowd believes is simple. These watches reach record prices because the craftsmanship is unmatched, and the auction is a transparent market where demand speaks honestly. That story has a comforting shape, but the auction room has never been a pure stage, and the gavel's fall is only the final curtain. The real script was drafted long before the saleroom lights dimmed. Subscribe if you want to keep tracing those hidden hands that shape the market you watch, one hammer price at a time. In the comments, type door number 2 if that JCK report just opened a room you did not expect to enter. Yet the comfort begins to fray when you learn who else is in the room. The JCK report covering the fallout of the Wall Street Journal piece, specifically named Patek Philippe and Omega among the brands mentioned in the controversy over auction bidding by manufacturers. These are not obscure houses. These are the pillars of the collector's imagination. The report did not declare guilt. In fact, the allegations were later called unfounded and misleading by parties cited in the follow-up coverage. But the naming alone changed the temperature of the room. Osvaldo Patrizzi, the founder of Antiquorum, responded with the calm of a man who has seen every accusation before. He said that watches bought by brands for their museum collections were not secret and were often publicly announced. Luxury watchmakers, he insisted, never made a secret of buying watches for their museum collections and frequently announce their important purchases. The logic sounds reasonable on its face. A brand preserving its heritage is not a crime. A museum acquisition is a celebration, not a concealment. And yet, the question that lingers is not whether the purchase happened, but what the purchase does to the market around it. You have felt the tension yourself. The lot number rises, the increments climb, and no one in the room knows whose paddle is in the air. That anonymity is the first crack in the official story. Not because it proves wrongdoing, but because it creates a fog. The JCK report noted that anonymous bids are used in many auction types and can be intended to prevent competitors from bidding higher once a brand's intent to buy is known. A legitimate tool, certainly, but a tool with an edge. When a brand bids anonymously on its own vintage pieces, the price it sets becomes the new reference point for every similar watch in private hands. Patrizzi's defense sharpens the paradox. He stated that watchmakers like Patek Philippe and Omega must bid against multiple other legitimate bidders. The word legitimate does a great deal of work in that sentence. It implies that the process is fair, that the brand wins only when the market agrees. But the market does not know the bidder's identity until the hammer falls. And by then, the record is set. The price is real. The bidder was real. The question is whether the demand was real or whether it was manufactured by a company buying its own reflection. Here is where the story splits into two readings. In the first reading, Patek Philippe is a guardian of its own legacy, acquiring important pieces for its museum, announcing them publicly, and bidding honestly against collectors who want the same watches. In the second reading, the same actions become a price engineering machine. Every museum purchase raises the floor, every anonymous bid signals confidence, every record becomes marketing for the next new model. The evidence does not settle the matter. The Wall Street Journal's allegations were called unfounded and misleading by parties in the follow-up coverage, and Patrizzi stated flatly that there has never been any collusion between Antiquorum and any watch manufacturer. That uncertainty is not a flaw in the story.
The user prompt explicitly
It is
states
the
no
point.
dialogue or character voices.
The
per
same
ambient
set
sound
of
only.
facts
Therefore, no
supports two
transcriptions need.
entirely different interpretations, and the market moves forward regardless of which one you choose to believe. Subscribe to keep walking this line between visible record and invisible intent with me, because the next layer always recontextualizes the last. Which reading stayed with you after the facts settled? Guardian of legacy or quiet price engineering? Drop the word guardian or engineer in the comments. You expect a conspiracy. What you find instead is a system of soft signals, each one defensible on its own, each one contributing to a market that behaves as if Patek Philippe is untouchable. Consider the psychology. A record auction price does not just reflect demand, it creates demand. The collector who sees a $5 million hammer price for a vintage perpetual calendar internalizes that number as the true value of the craft. The new watch on the waiting list inherits that halo. The scarcity becomes a story, and the story becomes a price. The collector who stops at the catalog description believes the market is rational. The collector who reads the footnotes sees a hall of mirrors. Which mind do you carry when you raise your paddle? This is not a question of ethics. It is a question of perception. The system works precisely because no single action can be proven as manipulation. Each bid is legitimate. Each purchase is announced. Each denial is calm. And yet, the cumulative effect is a market that has made Patek Philippe the apex predator of the auction world for decades. The deeper layer is the museum itself. When a brand buys a rare reference at auction and places it in its own museum, the watch gains a provenance that no private collector can match. The movement, the caliber, the hand-finished anglage, the polished bevels that catch light, becomes a relic of the brand's own story. The auction price becomes a permanent reference point, cited in catalogs and databases forever. The watch is no longer just a timepiece. It is a line item in the narrative of unassailable value, and the next collector who wants a similar piece must pay tribute to that narrative. You might feel a quiet unease here. If the record prices are partly staged, what does that say about the value of the watch on your own wrist? The answer is both unsettling and liberating. The value was never purely mechanical. It was always partly narrative. The movement, the balanceau, the balance wheel, the beating heart of the watch is real. The craftsmanship is real. The hand finishing, the Côte de Genève striping, the guilloche engraving. All of it is genuine skill, accumulated over centuries. But the price is a story that the market tells itself, and Patek Philippe has been one of the most skilled storytellers in the room. Patrizzi's denial becomes the final layer of the paradox. He said there was nothing secretive or ethically questionable about the auctions. Whether or not that is true, the absence of verifiable collusion is exactly what makes the system so effective. It operates in the gray space of perception, where intention cannot be proven and effect cannot be denied. The most elegant manipulation is the one no one can prove. The second hand sweeps without a tremor, a quiet pact between craftsman and owner. The collector who sees only the hammer price misses the silent hand that lifted the paddle. You are no longer that collector. You have seen the museum buyer, the anonymous bid, the reframed provenance. You understand that every auction record is an authored story, written in increments and paddles and carefully timed announcements. The movement never stops. Only the telling gets deeper. The watch on your wrist is not just a machine. It is a chapter in a story that has been written for a century, and you have just learned to read between the lines. You have just learned to read between the lines, a skill that separates the collector from the connoisseur. I invite you to subscribe and walk deeper into the workshop, where provenance speaks louder than price. Before you go, leave a single word in the comments, the first layer of the story you once missed. The resonance is strongest among those who listen. If this resonance calls to you, there is a place among the circle that honors it. Step inside the atelier. The quiet truth is that the watch never needed the market to be honest. The steel case, the gold indices, the hand-painted moon phase, these things existed long before any gavel fell, and they will exist long after the record prices fade from the catalogs. You began by running your finger down an estimate column, searching for value in a number. Now you know the number was never the point. The point is the 1,000 tiny decisions that brought that watch to the block, the anonymous bid, the museum's acquisition, the carefully timed announcement, the denial that sealed it all in place. So when you next hold a Patek Philippe, do not ask what it is worth. Ask what story it carries and who wrote that story and why. The answer will not diminish the watch. It will only deepen the quiet reverence you already feel. The balance wheel beats on, steady and patient, indifferent to the market it helped create. That mark on the case back, the one worn smooth by a wrist that belonged to someone else, tells you more than any estimate column ever could. In 2012, when the Wall Street Journal leveled its accusation of an alliance between Swiss brands and Antiquorum, collectors had to decide what to believe. The parties cited in the follow-up coverage called the story unfounded and misleading, and Patrizzi insisted that there has never been any collusion between Antiquorum and any watch manufacturer. Yet the question was never really about collusion. It was about whether a market can be shaped by perception alone. The evidence, as the JCK report made clear, does not contain verified primary proof of manipulation. It contains a record of allegations, denials, and the quiet mechanics of a system where anonymity and heritage preservation blur into something that looks from the outside like design. You now hold the lens to see both sides of that glass. What you do with the view is entirely your own.